First of all, introducing our challenger.
Out of the blue corner.
He's going to step in and he does. It's all over.
Let's bring on the boom.
This is Eternal MMA.
All right, everybody, welcome back and thank you for joining me here once again on the Eternal Insiders Podcast. I am Luke, as always. I'm your host, and I'm being joined once again today by my co-host, Darryl Martin, who's always here to talk about the cards that were, the cards that will be, and the cards that are coming up. We're here to talk about the cards that were, specifically Eternal 82 that just passed us by last weekend. Headlined by Quillen Soulkill, the Eternal Lightweight Champion, getting the job done in spectacular fashion, defeating Don Marfan, along with a spectacular bantamweight title fight. Rod Costa defending his belt against Alan Philpott with another filled out Eternal MMA Pro card. Some fantastic prelims at the HBF Stadium in Perth, Western Australia. We're constantly going over there and burning it down and setting new attendance records left, right, and centre, which we will get into in due time. We're here to talk about those fights, a few standouts, a few early contenders for knockout of the year, a couple of absolutely cracking fights. The card absolutely had it all, but I think it's one of those things, what do we expect every time we go back to Perth, Western Australia? It absolutely lights it up for us every time we go back there, and this one was no exception for Eternal 82. So Darryl Martin here to talk about it. Darryl very much enjoyed the card. We talked about it quite at length while we were sitting there watching the fights, but your thoughts in general, Darryl. How did you enjoy the card, mate, up there in Queensland? I certainly enjoyed it down here in Victoria.
Yeah, look, another great card from the guys there at Eternal MMA. Good matchups. We got to see a bit of everything, right? We saw submissions, we saw knockouts, we saw fights go the distance. You know, it's always good to see a variety of stuff on the cards rather than just, you know, an all-decision card or an all-knockout card, you know, because usually those cards are quite short and you don't really get to see, you know, much in the fights when they all go sort of by a knockout or something like that. But yeah, we got to see, you know, we got to see a pro female MMA fight that was fairly competitive and fun. You know, we got to see Quillen, obviously, he solidified himself at the top and stopped an surging Don Marfan from stealing that belt from him. Yeah, we saw, crazy elbows, liver shots, jumping knees. It sort of delivered on all angles. And then, of course, 3,500 screaming Perthanarians. Just, you know, it's just, you can't ask for too much more. They sort of like, they're setting the bar, like in my honest opinion, 100. At the moment in MMA crowds. Perth are doing it. They turn up, they like, it's like watching early Conor McGregor Irish fans. Do you know that they turn up, they back their Perth fighters to the hilt, super vocal. And like I said, having 3,500 people, and, you know, it was, I could imagine it was somewhat intimidating for some of the other fighters because some of those fighters were walking out to crickets, like just deafening silence. And then your opponent from WA comes out to a complete roar. I'd imagine it would, it would be quite an experience to sort of fight in front of that hostile Perth crowd.
No, I mean, you know, we'll certainly get to the fights, and we're going to start sort of from the bottom of the card and work our way up to the sort of the main event. But I mean, you know, what a moment there, Quillen Soulkill coming out to Metallica there. I mean, you're just touching on the crowd, and I mean, what an intimidating environment that must be. I mean, the amount of fans and friends that he had there, and coming out to, for whom the bell tolls. I mean, that was pretty spectacular. That was quite a sight. I mean, the mustache and everything, Quillen walking out. I mean, you know, he's absolutely on top of the world right now. You know, he's really cemented his spot, you know, at the top of the lightweight division. You know, for someone that's not fighting internationally as of yet, definitely cementing himself as the number one flyweight in the country right now. In my mind, pretty untouchable at this point. It'd be very interesting to see what comes next for him. But you know, at the age of 24 years old, and I mean, going against Don Marfan as well at the age of 23. I mean, two young guns putting it on, but Quillen just showing so much dominance there. You know, winning for the second time against Don Marfan in similar fashion with that rear naked choke. But it had it all. The scenes were there. The script was written for Quillen to do his thing in Perth. I mean, you just touched on the crowd. 3,500. I think it was 3,600 was the official number coming in from the boss man there. So breaking more records, an absolute sellout crowd. Just tickets going like crazy. But that's just what Perth does, man. I know the Gold Coast is a spiritual home for Eternal MMA, but I mean, Perth has sort of become like the people's main event sort of thing in a way. Like, you know, that's sort of the place to be. So hats off again to the Perth crowd. Always something special when we go to Perth.
Yeah, look, it's but back in the day, Queensland was the home for MMA in Australia. Like the crowds that we used to get here on the Gold Coast, in Brisbane, all that type of stuff, historically were those massive crowds. But that sort of baton has been passed to Perth, and Perth have picked it up and ran with it. So yeah, I'd like to see everybody here in Queensland start turning out again to those events. I'd like to try and bring that back to Queensland. I'd like to steal that back when we used to have big events, sold out, packed, stadium shows. Well, not stadiums, but like large arena shows, large events and stuff, which like still we're getting big crowds, but just in Perth at the moment, like I said, they're turning out in droves. They're packing the stadium out there. It's sold out before the event lands, all that type of stuff. I'd like to see the fans here in Queensland sort of get behind it a little bit more and sort of really show up to these things. It's and look, when you have a look at obviously, Queensland's a big state as well. WA a massive state, but a lot of us are centered around Brisbane and Gold Coast. So I'd like to see a few more of us make the trip that some of those Perth fans are making to get to Perth and to support the show, support their fighters, and support the scene.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, Perth certainly leading the way in terms of the attendance and showing us how it's done over there. But I mean, it must be said, we got Eternal 83 coming up, in a few short weeks, which no doubt we'll do a bit of a setup video for that one. But from what we're hearing, there's only about 60 odd seats left for that Eternal 83 card back at the Southport Sharks in Gold Coast there. So in terms of the turnout, I mean, it's still a bit of a hotbed up there in Queensland. I mean, I'm down here in Victoria and we're not sort of, seeing Eternal here lately as far as having any shows down here. I mean, we'll see what happens in the future, but I'd love some cars down here. So Perth and Queensland certainly leading the way for Eternal MMA. Looking forward to that Eternal 83 card there, of course. But we turn our attention back to the Eternal 82 card that we just had. And I mean, as far as the main card goes, starting off with an absolute bang. I mean, we can touch a little bit on the prelims with a couple of exciting sort of knockouts and performances there. But I mean, you want to talk about a way to start the show for UFC Fight Pass. Khan Diarra, very much in need of a win. I mean, a man that just came off the Fight of the Year, the nominated Fight of the Year for 2023. Unfortunately for him, in a split decision loss, but Fight of the Year nonetheless. Came into that one as a 1-3 professional, definitely needed a win. Fighting against a Korean opponent that came over, a very game Korean opponent that did drop him in the first round, but devastating fashion did Khan Diarra get the job done with a couple of heavy elbows, a couple of right elbows there up against the cage, and then dropped him with a nasty left elbow down on the canvas to set himself up for what's potential. No, it's the first card of the year, but I mean, he's the leading candidate for knockout of the year so far, and it's up to whoever wants to come in and top him in that fashion. But I mean, that was a Matt Brown style elbow from hell, man. Like, what a way to kick off that Eternal card on UFC Fight Pass, Khan Diarra.
Yeah, look, again, I guess unsurprising to us, Khan, just a warhorse, gets dropped, gets up, gets on with it. We saw from the Fight of the Year nomination that he got, that's the guy he is. I think his 1-3 record isn't indicative of the fighter that he actually is. And obviously the young Korean kid got an opportunity to see exactly what we say when we say Khan Diarra's, he's a warhorse. There's no quitting this kid. And I'm not sure if you heard on the stream, there's actually that first elbow, it echoed on the stream. It made like two pieces of wood hitting noise.
There's like a crack.
The stream.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
almost like when they're clapping the sort of the card together to signify the last 10 seconds. Like, it was like, oh, it's kind of the end of the round. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was loud, man. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it was, he worked well to get himself back into that position. Again, sort of that, he had that ability to just stay, hey, I've got to keep moving forward here. I can't get dropped again, but I also can't just stay on the back foot. I can't hide away from this guy. He felt the power. He got dropped, got up, got on with it. And again, it's a good fight, obviously, for the fans, because they got a bit of everything, back and forth, to and fro. We had the comeback, all that type of stuff. Good for, always say, for other fighters, younger fighters, guys coming up to watch that. Get dropped. There's no need to panic, try to do anything crazy, consolidate, get through to the next round. You get a minute off in between, talk to your corner, shake those cobwebs out. He reset, came back in, and got the win. And not just got the win in a fantastic standout, epic fashion that you sort of, you like to get those wins. That's going to be used for promotional material. That's going to be highlight stuff. That's the type of stuff that you put on your Instagram. That's for your friends, your family. Everybody enjoys that. The fans, it was a really good moment for him. And like I said, it's a good moment for him going forward too. To feel that power, not to freak out, not to roll over and play dead. Oh, I've been dropped. Oh no, it's all over. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people get dropped and they lose a bit of heart. They start, I don't want to say looking for ways out, but they're not necessarily then looking for ways to win. They're looking for ways to survive, where obviously Khan just doesn't have that in him at all stages. The kid's trying to win. And, he's such a dangerous kid. Like, we saw that in his other fights. Like I said, 1 and 3 isn't indicative of the fighter he is. This performance is really indicative of a classic performance where he's in a dogfight and he just keeps turning up, and eventually got the win.
That'd be cool to sort of see if it sets him up for a big 2024. I mean, as you said, 1 and 3, but certainly not indicative of, what Khan is capable of. I mean, you go back to Khan's debut, and I mean, to make your debut against a little-known guy called John Martin Fraser, to make your debut against a scary monster like that, our middleweight champion at Eternal MMA. Did lose that by a punch in the first round, and then went on to face Jesse Armstrong at Eternal 62 and had a submission loss there as well. Bounced back against Anthony Bono, had that fight of the year against Marjan Ahara, where he unfortunately lost, but comes back in absolutely devastating fashion here to set himself at least at 2 and 3. Give himself a good springboard platform, first card of the year to go forward. And we talked about this before the card. I mean, those couple of Korean guys that came over, very similar fighters. I can't remember if they were both out of Korean top team, but very much guys that sort of, book on them was they sort of look to sort of set their struggle, look to set up their grappling with their strikes and always sort of look for that grapple. So it seemed like Khan was maybe a bit conscious of that. And that's where the fight went up against the cage, when, the Korean trying to grapple him very heavy. But I mean, what a way to sort of get out of that. Set yourself back up on the right foot, potentially go all the way through 2024, with that potential knockout of the year win. That'd be pretty spectacular. We're going to get Khan here on the podcast to talk about it. Can't wait to hear about all his thoughts. He certainly had a lot of fans in the crowd. Another WA product there. So Khan Diarra, absolutely hats off to you, brother. Congratulations. Can't wait to have you here on the pod and talk all about it. But we had some other spectacular fights going forward onto that one. As you said, we did have a fantastic women's fight there as well. We did have, though, a nice surprise package as far as someone that I wasn't personally aware of. We did have a young kid making his debut out of the Lions Den Academy, Marwan Rahiki, tall, lanky kickboxer, originally born in Morocco. Got a little bit of star potential about this kid. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I mean, he's got the goods. I mean, you want to talk about the finish to start with. I mean, long, rangy kickboxer, sets up that little jab to turn that into that nice, hook to the liver and just sort of shut the body of his opponent down to sort of get the finish. Very slick on the mic afterwards. So, he's got a bit of that razz about him. Just a little sort of sprinkles of some of those stars that we see on the, the Sugar Shawns, a little bit of the style bender about him. I know he's young, and I'm not saying that, he's going to the UFC at this stage or anything like that. But I mean, just in terms of what he projects and how he sort of fights for someone sort of so young and so sort of raw, I mean, there was some essence there of something at least sort of pretty special. I mean, you can talk about this. He did get himself into some unfavorable positions on the ground, which he did deal with pretty well. There was that nice little hip toss that he did land to sort of get out of that whizzer from his opponent. But I mean, the finish, you want to talk about another finish. I don't know if it's going to be necessarily the finish of the year, but as far as my favorite finish of the night, just for being so slick, you want to talk about a nice liver shot, a nice Nicky Holtzkin-esque left hook to the liver. That was a special finish from one Marwan Rahiki.
Yeah, look, it's a classic body shot finish. It doesn't get to look any better than that. It's he never looked like blocking that punch. He never really saw the punch, which obviously makes it way worse. It's a punch you don't see is the one that hurts you. And it's another great example of you don't need to swing for the cheap seats at all stages to get the finish. The timing was there. The distance was there. He got the perfect shot placed it perfectly right underneath the rib cage. Right.
It was that nice little setup too. Just like popped that little jab out and then pulled it back and then sort of tucked it under the rib cage. That was sick. Yeah.
He did that first to what they call them, handcuffing, like to get his hands high.
Yeah. And
he reached straight underneath it because the guy's hands are high, straight underneath, bang. And it was, like I said, it was a perfect example of the body shot. The moment he took a step back after receiving that body shot, he took one breath in, straight to the floor. And that's how they feel. You get hit, you're not 100% sure how bad it was till you take that first breath, and it won't let you breathe. And this funny feeling goes through your whole body, which you could see, like he got hit with it, took that half step back, and then just crumpled to the ground and, went straight to the fetal position. It's you can't breathe. It's a strange feeling through your body. And yeah, it really is. The instant thing is just to cover up because you can't perform. Your body's no longer doing what you're asking it to do. And look, it was a beautiful shot. Like the balance on him, like you see when he throws that shot, he didn't lean into it. He didn't lean way back. He didn't try to overshoot it. He saw the opening, got his hands up, went underneath, hit it, waited for the reaction. And when he dropped, then look, if anything, he probably showed maybe a little bit too much mercy because when he dropped, he sort of almost looked at the ref like, is that it?
Yeah.
Came in, a few extra shots, and he was done. But look, on his feet, he looked fantastic. Again, the guys out of Luke Pizzuto's Lions Den down there, they're, fantastic. They always come well-rounded. He looked like he's a little bit fresher on the ground. Like there was some, I think he got out of things with his athleticism more than he did with his, overall skill and ability to wrestle up or to defensively get out of certain positions. I think it was a lot more athletic than it was those things. But again, this is, he's debuting. He's a young guy. I'd never heard of him. I'd never even heard.
I'd never heard of him either. I mean, I knew, because his opponent, Julian Justiniano, I mean, he, I didn't realize this. I knew he was a fairly grapple-heavy type fighter. The word on him was, he was wrestling. I don't know if it was collegiate level or what he was just training over in America. So, at least a well-accomplished wrestler and that sort of thing. So when you talk about getting out of those positions, for Marwan, with his athleticism. I mean, to do that against a guy like Julian Justiniano, who is like quite a strong grappler, I mean, that's just not a testament to him. But I mean, hats off to Julian as well. I mean, once he took that body shot to the liver and he was sort of down, he sort of gave that little look up after the fight got waved off, and he was like, yeah, you definitely sort of got me with that one. So I can imagine he's feeling like absolute shit in that moment, but he sort of gave him that little nod, like, fair play, man. Like that was a terrific shot. So, testament to both those guys for putting it on.
Yeah, look, if you speak to a lot of people, they'll prefer to take a shot to the head than they will to the liver. This is something about body shots that the feeling is disgusting. It's a feeling like no other when you go to take that breath. And like I said, the pain and that feeling runs all the way through your body, and your body just no longer wants to respond, no longer wants to fight. It really takes all the fight out of you. And as you could see from that immediate response, he wasn't trying to fight back. He wasn't trying to do anything. He was trying to curl to that fetal position, try to take that pain away, try and get himself into a position where he can actually get breath back into his body. And like I said, fantastic way to debut. Like that's the way to do it. Come out there and put on that type of performance. And I can't wait to see him again in the cage.
I absolutely can't wait to see him again in the cage. I mean, I know I say that a lot because I love seeing eternal regulars and everything get back in the cage. But I mean, as soon as I'd seen that fight, and I mean, I got out of my chair for that finish as well. I'm like, man, I want to see this kid back like as soon as possible. I mean, young featherweight, we got some fantastic featherweights in this country. Obviously, Justin Van Heerden, the champion there, but I mean, you got guys like Seb Salai and, a lot of those other featherweights that are, really coming through the system. And it's only his first professional fight, but I mean, add him to the list of guys that could potentially contend for a belt here. Very exciting. He's definitely got the stuff. So when I say I can't wait to see him in the cage, I mean team up on the next possible card that we can get him in on. Because I mean, as far as like highlights, and he looks like he's gathered a bit of a following. He looks like he's got the chops on social media and everything. So, we love a fun fighter. We love a guy that shows out. We love a guy with a bit of moxie, and he seems to have it in spades. So let's get Marwan Rahiki back as soon as possible. We'd certainly love to see him fight. But he was one of a few fantastic fights we had on that card. We did have a sort of a little bit of in terms of a change of pace from, I guess, the finishes that we had Toby Meach versus Daniel Mitchell, which was a little more sort of grapple heavy. It was certainly played out for most part against the cage. We did have a bit of a moment there early in the fight with what was an illegal knee that did ultimately cost Toby a point. But he didn't need to go to the judges' scorecards because he brought that knee back in the third round for the finish there too. So it certainly had its moments. For the purists, I guess, in terms of the grappling and everything, that was something they'd enjoy. There maybe was some people there in the crowd that weren't necessarily enjoying the grappling exchanges. But I mean, Toby Meach, from Perth himself and everything, certainly had the hometown crowd there in his favour. I enjoyed this fight. In terms of the stoppage, I think we had a little bit to say about, whether that was an ideal stoppage. I mean, his opponent, Daniel Mitchell, didn't seem to have too much issue with it. But, I mean, it was still a spectacular knockout nonetheless. Toby Meach moves to 6-2, 3-fight winning streak. Another, up-and-comer in that sort of featherweight division. So, hats off to Toby Meach. It was a pretty decent fight around and a good finish.
Yeah, look, the first knee, which I think was one of the best pieces of chat I've heard post-fight, where he's called it the naughty knee.
The naughty knee, that was the one, yes.
It certainly was a naughty knee. If knees were crimes, that one would have got him nearly a life sentence. It was, I think there was 7 points of contact on the ground when he had everything on the ground when that knee hit him in the head.
It was almost all the way down, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, but look, again, full credit to Mitchell. He could have taken it there, because it was a solid knee to the head.
It was. He came back so quick. Look, I've seen guys in the UFC take less than that against the cage, and they want to take. Look, I'm not a fighter, so I'm not going to say what you sort of feel in there. Of course not. But I mean, he sort of. You're right. I mean, he could have used that, to his advantage. But I mean, he was up pretty sort of quick. So now let's go. So first of all, I mean, fair play to Mitchell there for keeping the fight going. And
look, it was, it certainly there was nothing deliberate about it. Meach was competing. He's trying to, it was obvious what he was trying to do because we saw it later on. Against the cage, pull him up, get that knee to the head. He was just obviously in the moment, excited. Hey, he's wide open, bang knee. And, when you're in that moment, you're, like I said, you're not really taking notice of how many hands does he have on the ground, where is he? Oh, his head's open. Bang,
you're in fight mode, man. Like you're engaged. Like it's animalistic.
Then afterwards he's kind of like, and you saw immediately, like his immediate reaction was like, oh yeah, that's that's my. And look, a bit of a what would you call it? A bit of good and a bit of bad from the Perth referees over there. I think it was fantastic to take the point off him because it was a significant moment in the fight. It was a big knee to a downed opponent.
Yep.
Like I said, he was almost all the way down. It was a bad one. I definitely think there was no point in warning him. It could change the fight. I think a point needed to be taken, and I think that was a fantastic piece of refereeing from the referee.
Can I ask you this very quickly, just in that point, because this sort of brings up a pretty good point in that, when we talk about these sort of moments where you see points get taken, maybe you look to the UFC where you see a point get taken or a point not get taken, it often seems to really depend on how the fighter reacts. So if they're sort of on the floor and they're sort of holding their face and that sort of thing, the referee's sort of more inclined to take the point. Daniel Mitchell wasn't necessarily doing that. He was looking up. He was looking like he was good to go. He wasn't sort of holding his head or anything like that. And the referee, to his credit, still said, no, that's still a point-worthy deduction. What's sort of your opinion on that? Should the refs really be at this situation? Should we really be not taking into account the visual impact of how the affected fighter reacts? It should be really what the blow was and not necessarily how it's impacted the fighter. But I mean, I think we do sort of see a bit of difference in that.
In the end, it was a blatant, flagrant foul.
Yeah, so you've got to call it on the foul, not the result necessarily of how he feels it.
It's a blatant, flagrant foul. It's, it wasn't a knee to the body that diverted off the shoulder and hit him in the head. It wasn't an accidental inside of the leg and hit the cup. There was nothing accidental. It was blatant. He tried to knee him in the head. And I think it was the only option, especially like any type of solid contact to the head, especially with a knee kick, those lower limbs that are quite strong. Like I said, fighters sometimes are too strong, too tough for their own good. So it's hard to gauge exactly how bad a guy's hurt. So I think the point deduction was the right decision. And it does say like, hey, you cannot do that. It's a good message for the fighter then. It's a good message for other fighters. And I think also, if he is some way impaired, it is giving him
a way back into the fight as far as potentially.
Way back into the fight, exactly. Couldn't have said any better myself. And then, look, in terms of the exchanges, look, it wasn't an exciting fight. It just wasn't. It was technical. Both kids, look, I don't think either of them, just from what I saw, really believed in their stand-up. They both sort of had a couple of opportunities to throw and then sort of clinched up again very quickly. Maybe something for them both to have a look at in terms of, their striking and stuff. Or look, it's again easy for me to say that sitting out here, but there's a potential that both of them came with a game plan to get it on the floor, and it was just two grapple-heavy game plans coming together. And of course, you end up with a grappling and a cage grappling style match. Look, it was intricate and a lot of trying to get the inside position, a lot of attempted trying to get those takedowns, trying to get behind their opponents, and all that takes time, and it's an inch by inch game, and it's to the fans and to a lot of people, and look, even to me, just in terms of excitement, it's not exciting. Is it technical? Yes. Yeah. Is it a part of the game?
There's a difference.
Yes. Is it exciting? No, it's not super very exciting. And then obviously we got to the third round. Look, and I mean, credit to Mitch. He said in the post-fight, that's what he was trying to do the whole time with that knee. And eventually he got there. He got that head on the outside, got that knee up, kneed him. I'm dubious. Like I said, I'll give credit to the referee saying the point takeaway, fantastic. The stoppage, bit dubious on. He got hit. I think he folded a little bit, but he seemed lucid.
His head sort of stayed up. He sort of held there. It was a hard shot. Yeah.
It was like I said, his legs went on him 100%. When you watch from that back angle, when he gets hit with it, both knees buckle towards the floor. His legs certainly went on him. But yeah, like you said, the head stay up. He didn't flop. The arms stay connected. I think we definitely, given the fact that the ref didn't stop the body shot in the previous fight and allowed the fighter to take a few more shots and to make sure that the fight's done, I definitely think there was room there to allow that fighter to take a few more shots because he didn't seem sparked. He stayed connected. Me personally, I think it deserved another 10 seconds just to have a look and hey, is he going to cop some more shots? Okay, then we can pull it up. And straight away after the fight, he looked good. He didn't hop up and stagger along the
cage. Gave a smile, a bit of a pat on the back.
Yeah, yep. He stood up. I think he accepted it.
He did
for what it was,
yep.
But I don't think he thought he was out. And yeah, I thought he was probably still good to go.
Is there any, is it too much to give any credit to, not just this referee, but I mean, in any referee, are they potentially taking into account in that sort of moment that this opponent has taken a pretty vicious knee in that first round where he took that illegal knee? Given that he'd already sort of taking one, is that maybe in the mind of the referee in that time where it's like, oh my God, he's just taken another knee to the head. That's the end of the fight. Or do you think that's not a thought in the referee's head necessarily anymore and he's just calling what he sees maybe a bit too early? Is that a factor at all? Is that something they should consider?
Look, I guess it's probably there somewhere, but wasn't one of those fights where a guy was taking a lot of punishment for the whole 3 rounds.
And it wasn't the first round where he took that and he was clear for the rest of it. So you
for the rest of the fight, he didn't seem, like I said, it wasn't like they were exchanging blows. Anyone was cut, anyone was beat up. No one had really been, staggered, rocked, any of that type of stuff. So, and like I said, you said the same thing. His head stayed up. It didn't go loose. He stayed connected to his opponent. I just think, sometimes, I guess, in that moment, it's very easy for me to say, look, I think it was premature, and I do think it was premature. But I'm not in there. I guess maybe in the moment, the knee sounded different, the legs buckled. Obviously, it's definitely nothing malice about it.
No, of course
not. He's not trying to help anybody win there. If you see the knees buckle, that's I think that's when you should be right on top of it. You should be right over the top. You should be, a hair's breadth away from stopping it. But I just,
it's a discussion. It's a discussion at least. Yeah. It's not a bad stoppage. It's just could have that gone a little bit longer based on sort of how he did drop and all that sort of thing. But as you said, not a bad stoppage. I mean, it's just one of those things we maybe would have liked to have seen it gone that a little bit longer and see how it happened.
And again, it was we spoke about a couple of weeks back. Meech, good on the microphone. He had a good post-fight chat. Good bit of English banter. Good lad.
Of course.
And I enjoyed him on the mic. And yeah, again, it was good. It's sort of in one of those fights. You almost couldn't write it any better for that night, because the crowd probably was a bit restless. I was a bit restless watching it at home. It had, that 3 rounds felt like 33 rounds. It was slow pace, and it was good. The knee, the finish, good bit of chat on the mic. It really brought the crowd back into the event and got everybody back engaged. And yeah, you couldn't have asked for anything more. And again, like I say, these type of characters on the mics, these type of guys who can sort of sell themselves and get the crowd involved. Like, it's good practice for yourself now, and it's good practice for yourself in the future. And Tony Meech had a good post-fight chat. The naughty knee is definitely going down as one of my favourite post-fight comments.
It was a fantastic comment. I mean, you talk about a bit of the British banter. I mean, out of Scrappy MMA as well. I think there's another British guy there at Scrappy MMA that's not sort of bad with the banter there too. That might be his head coach. So, a few British guys there sort of learning from each other how to sort of get us riled up with a few of those comments. Always love seeing Ben Vickers there, of course, cage side. I mean, on that, he had a fantastic night for his fighters, getting wins sort of left, right, and center. So a very good night for Scrappy MMA all around. But I mean, ultimately, you talk about that grapple sort of heavy fight that it was. I mean, they were giving it, I guess, sort of back and forth with each other. Ultimately, for Daniel Mitchell, that was ultimately his undoing when he shot in for the legs against the cage. Toby Meech managed to turn that, get that head off to the outside position and get the knee. So, sort of a little bit ironic there that that's sort of where the knee came from. Regardless of what we think of the finish or not, it was a spectacular knee. Toby Meech sets himself up for something, pretty juicy going forward. That's his 3rd win in a row at bantamweight. A couple of finishes on the trot. So let's see what comes next for Toby Meech. But, Eternal through and through, Scrappy MMA, Perth, Western Australia. We'll see him on an Eternal card, no doubt, sometime soon. Hopefully not with some naughty knees, but we'll look out for some more juicy comments there in the post-fight speeches should he keep the wins rolling. But we had a lot of good things in this night. But one thing that was fantastic to see back was finally having another women's fight back for Eternal MMA. We had Amina Hadaya taking on Courtney Martin. Amina Hadaya out of Freestyle MMA, of course, home to Alexander Volkanovski, our featherweight champion for the UFC. Justin Van Heerden, our featherweight champion for Eternal MMA. A lot of great guys at that gym, of course. Amina Hadaya is certainly one of those prospects up and coming. One of those sort of fighters, when you look at how slick she looked in that fight, now with a 4-2 record, and you sort of think, is she a 4-2 fighter? Because, she looked fantastic, especially into that 2nd and 3rd round where she really kind of took over. And we talked a little bit about this on Facebook, through the fight. That 1-2 combo that she kept busting out, just sort of the way she was able to circle off and kind of use her footwork and everything and really work that jab. She looked fantastic. She got a pretty dominant decision win in the end. Courtney Martin just constantly advancing the whole fight. But, the theme of it was really Amina Hadaya playing the matador to Courtney Martin's bull, came out on top. Look fantastic. Can't wait to see some more women's fight in general. Some more women's fights in general. It's one of those things where the pool's a bit shallow in terms of the women's flyweights or the girls in general as far as finding a good matchup. But fantastic to see the girls in there. Congratulations to Amina Hadaya on a very impressive win. Looking forward to seeing her back there. But your thoughts on that fight, Darryl?
Yeah, look, it was a good scrap, good fight. Obviously it was a mostly stand-up affair. And I honestly thought a mainly stand-up affair might favour Courtney, might favour Martin a little bit. But Hadaya, that she really, really controlled that distance a lot better than Courtney did. Way better. Courtney, she was just a little bit short all the time. She just couldn't ever quite find her range. She looked stiff. She kind of did a lot of that. She put her head down and
sort of lumbered forward a bit, yeah.
Yeah, she looked a bit stiff. I don't know if there was a bit of nerves there. I'm not sure exactly what happened because, from all reports, she's quite a good fighter. And that's my first time watching her. And, what I'd heard beforehand that she was quite handy. She just looked a bit stiff on the night. And don't get me wrong. I think Hadaya really, I think she controlled the distance. And she also, just that 1-2 down the pipe, had her not wanting to advance down that middle line. She was trying to get off that center line, and I don't blame her. That right hand was, picture perfect and was catching her all the time, right in the middle. But she just Hedaya looked better on her feet. The circling looked better. She looked a lot more fluid, and she got look. Don't get me wrong, Martin caught her a few times with some good knees against the cage, and there was some good exchanges there. Look, it's just my own personal thing. Like, I understand you smiling all the time when you're out there. You're smiling. But I'm like, you're losing the fight. You're getting hit. I don't know. Like, you keep smiling when you get hit. I don't know what that does for you. Maybe it helps you. I don't know how it would. It doesn't really. You keep smiling. You're getting hit. Stop smiling. Start doing something different. Start changing your game plan. Start doing something. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just. I kept seeing her smile, and I was like, "What are you smiling about? You're losing this fight."
Get angry, get fire up.
Yeah. I almost felt like I wanted the corner. Hey, no more smiling. Get out there, and I want to see, walk that girl down. I want you to see, walk her into some of these heavy shots of yours. But it seemed like a very lumbering, sort of lumber forward, head down, stiff. And look, like I said, I don't know. Maybe there was a little bit of nerves at play, but also take nothing away from Hedaya. Maybe Hedaya made her fight that fight. Maybe just her ability to circle out, to work off the cage, to control that distance, and that consistency of that 1-2 right down the pipe. And she shot them so straight, and they hit so many times. Maybe she made her fight that fight. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting. I mean, the first round was, that was obviously the most competitive round. I think there was one judge that gave it the first round to Martin. I don't know about that, but I mean, it wasn't all one-way traffic from Hedaya. In that first round, it was a little bit competitive. There was some strikes exchanged, some strikes exchanged. A bit of a tongue twister there for me. Some moments on the cage and that sort of thing. But I mean, Hedaya just, really fought off the counter through that second and third round. As far as you mentioning, her sort of lumbering forward, that's the way the whole fight played out through the second to the end of the third round. Sort of curious to sort of see, where Amina Hedaya's sort of level is at. Like I said, 4-2, trying to sort of analyze that fight and, really work out, like, where are her skills at? Was that sort of, like, how much of it was, Courtney with sort of not a fantastic game plan? Was it Amina's game plan to really, lure her onto her shots? Because, I mean, Courtney was walking to her shots left, right, and center. So, how much of it was Courtney making Amina look good? Or, was Amina just that good? I'd love to see her, add a few more tools to her belt. As far as her striking goes, I would have loved to have seen a little bit more to the body. I'm only saying this because, like, I'm a fan of this girl. Like, I loved her work in the cage. I would have liked to have seen some more leg kicks from her, just like something she mix up. She didn't necessarily need it because, I mean, that jab and that 1-2 is working so fantastic. But, I mean, as her sort of career goes on, if you don't, look, maybe she has that in her arsenal for all I know, but, there's times I was thinking, man, I'd love to see her just rip the body a little bit or maybe throw a couple of leg kicks and sort of buckle her, but I mean, the 1-2 was working all night. It looked about as slick of a 1-2 as we saw all night, be it from the men or the women. So it's really just sort of what happens now is, do we have sort of enough girls? There's been a topic before, do we have the competition from the girls in this sort of big country, the big states? Can we facilitate enough of these fights for sort of these girls to flourish, to keep fighting here in this country? I know you're sort of getting into a few gyms and that sort of thing, and there's a lot more to come on that as far as what we might sort of see from the content you'll be producing. But are you seeing enough from sort of the girls out there? Are we going to see some more girls sort of coming through, not just the amateurs, but into the professional ranks? Like, what sort of competition can we expect for the girls, do you think?
Look, we are starting to see a few more in the gyms. Again, obviously it's nowhere to the amount of male competitors we have, but we are starting to see it get a little bit more popular. Obviously, it's very popular in BJJ, and we're getting some of that crossover from BJJ into MMA and things like that. So, it's obviously a work in progress, and we're getting some of those Muay Thai girls come over and learn grappling, and boxing girls come over and learn grappling and stuff. Look, I don't know. It's really, really hard to say because at the moment we're really in the infancies of building out these divisions. We're getting more people. It's starting to happen. But I mean, look, again, Cam's started and obviously has this relationship with Korea fostered. Maybe that's an answer to some of our problems. Maybe Korea has these girls that we need. And maybe that's something that'll happen. We'll start getting these Korean girls to come over and fight our girls. Maybe it's Thailand. Maybe we can reach into Thailand, and because obviously, again, Cam's fostering these relationships with various gyms, and there's no way Australia's just having this problem. The problem would be systemic throughout all nations. You just don't see as many female fighters on local regional scenes. So obviously, Cam's ability to foster these relationships, build these relationships with gyms in other countries, and we can all help each other. It's a bit of a reciprocal, relationship where, hey, send us your girls. Your girls need fight experience, so do ours. Send them out here. That way they're not just training all year for nothing. We can give them fights on our promotion. So, yeah, look, I think that's probably the solution that I see in the short term. There will be girls coming up, and there is girls coming up 100%. Whether they'll all get here at the same time, at the same skill level, to build that division to where we can have constant, regular pro fights, I don't know how long that's going to take. And I think in the interim, the Band-Aid fix to that is to maybe get some of these girls out of these other gyms that are locally, like in the Asia Pacific area, where we can sort of get them over, get them a fight. And like I said, we get them a fight on a fight show. Our girls get a fight, their girls get a fight, because it's hard to stay motivated when you're training for one fight a year, maybe,
I mean, I think if my memory serves me correctly, I mean, for Casey O'Neill, when she had, I can't remember how many title fights she had here, maybe 2 title fights, but at least one of her title fights, if it was her only title fight, was against an international opponent where they had to fly someone in, that would be sort of at least to her level and that sort of thing. So you're right. Like maybe at least that is now sort of the path. But I mean, like you said, we're fostering those relationships. We've seen the Korean guys come over here that are interested in fighting on these cards. They're not being dragged here. I mean, they want to come here on their own accord. When we talked about this in the last pod we had, the Korean guys that came over and cornered some of their guys, they put their hand up and said, I want to come here and fight. I want to fight on UFC Fight Pass. I want to fight in Australia. I want to fight against these guys. I want to meet new people. I want to fight on the biggest promotion in the country and get some good looks under my belt. So if we can keep that going for sort of the girls, I mean, sign me up, because Amina Hedaya, she's certainly one of those ones in the rise. Out of freestyle MMA, training with some of the best people in the world there. Great girl with a lot of personality. She's going to come on the podcast in the next couple of days and talk about that fight and everything too. Very curious to sort of see what she thinks is her path forward. But it is sort of very exciting, and she looked fantastic. She's definitely one to watch for the future.
Yeah, look, I think unfortunately we didn't see enough out of that fight to really grasp her skill level, because it was basically a cage Muay Thai fight. It's basically sort of what it was. We didn't really get to see a bunch of ground, takedowns, escapes, ground and pound. Not even a lot against the cage. There was some, but, I guess we didn't really get to see the full spectrum of MMA and her abilities in that, which she may harbor. It was just hard to get it from that fight. Obviously, she did what she had to do in that fight. She looked great in that fight. And look, obviously here on Eternal MMA Podcast, we don't like to get political. We're not a political organisation, but I did like
live
her,
on camera at least.
I did like her post-fight call out, Hedaya calling out, taking a moment to call out for a ceasefire over there in Palestine, and I think it's a good moment when you're caught up in the win of a fight. You're caught up in the moment. She was obviously quite excited by the win. To take a moment and stop and to think about more than yourself. And
100%. Yep.
Yeah, look, it's obviously, if anybody watches anything, it's not fabulous over there. It's not good. A ceasefire in any conflict is obviously what everybody wants. And I thought it was a good moment from her to call out for that and be another voice in the crowd of everybody who wants to see an end to the fighting, wherever it happens to be. And for her to call that out, I thought was a fantastic and a really good moment for her.
No, she used the mic well, and a big shout out for her mum there as well. So, some sentimental moments, and some, good moments to as what you sort of said, thinking outside of herself in that moment when, I'm sure all you want to think about in that moment is yourself, because it's such an elating feeling that not many of us will experience inside the cage. So for her to want to sort of share that, with, more people, even just outside of sort of friends and family, but, for, a lot of those devastating things that are happening overseas, hats off to her. Congratulations on the big win. Amina, another person I'm very much looking forward to having on the podcast. Talk about the win. We'll certainly talk to you soon We moved on to one of our men that we love to talk about. Good old Wes Kappa there, getting his fight against another one of the Korean guys. We always look forward to a Wes Kappa show. Probably not, I mean, in terms of, it had some Wes Kappa moments. I mean, as far as not my favorite Wes Kappa fight. It was still a Wes Kappa win. I still think my favorite performance was his first performance. I'm talking about bell to bell, I mean, before the bell and after the bell, as far as, to chef kiss Wes Kappa. But I mean, it had a very interesting finish with a little sneaky shot there after the bell. A bit of a naughty punch, bit of a naughty knee, I guess, in Wes Kappa's sort of fashion, but with a punch there after the bell. Ref maybe stepping in there just a little bit sort of sheepishly to stop that fight. But I mean, it was one of those fights where Wes, again, we talked about before the show, these couple of Korean guys that were coming over to fight, definitely looked like they want to sort of just use their strikes to set up the grappling, and it looked like Wes was very cognizant of that through the fight. One thing that was very similar for this fight, same with his first fight for Eternal MMA, is that he sort of grew into the takedown defense. He did get taken down that sort of first time, but then he started to sort of deal with it sort of better and better. Find some homes for, his jab and that sort of thing. We know what a prolific boxer that Wes Kappa was. Sort of worked that jab to the body, felt his way into the fight. Looked to get his combos off very quick because he sort of looked like he was really sort of, I guess, I want to say gun shy is necessarily the right term, but it looked like he was very sort of aware that those takedowns would be coming in any moment. But he handled the moment well. He did miss weight, unfortunately, so it wasn't, it was billed as a lightweight fight, and we're hoping maybe we'd see a potential lightweight title in Wes Kappa's future. But he gets the win nonetheless. We get a great Wes Kappa moment. Brilliant on the mic as always after the fight. Just an absolute man of the people is Wes Kappa.
Yeah, look, there's a lot to unpack from this fight. And to begin with, I'm going to toot our trumpet, blow our horn. I mean, this pretty much within reason played out the way we spoke about it on the podcast. First off, we talked about the weight cut. What would it do? Well, we now know what it did. It caused him a lot of problems. He struggled with it to the point where he didn't make weight. And this is always a question: is a weight cut worth it? For guys like Robert Whittaker and stuff like that, they worked out it wasn't. And look at Robert, went on to be the middleweight champion, where he was struggling to make welterweight. Is this the same thing for Wes? Maybe. When he was on the mic, he spoke about other weight cuts where he passed out, hit his face, knocked his teeth out, all sorts of things. Again, when you're passing out, knocking your teeth out, cutting weight, maybe that's not the weight division for you. It's got, like, call me crazy, call me silly, call me what you will. It feels like...
That's fine.
Let's
get up and walk it off,
Yeah, and look, and from what I know, he went on to fight that fight. He went on to fight in that fight where he passed out, knocked his teeth out. So, again, like I said before, sometimes fighters too tough for their own good. But I think the weight cut bothered him. I don't know. There was a lot of things, obviously, in that fight. We spoke about, again, that if you watch a Wes Kappa fight, you're going to bring a grapple-dominant, a grapple-heavy game, which obviously his Korean opponent brought really good takedowns, very grapple-dominant game, and he had some strong overhands of himself, some strong strikes in general, but he did throw that overhand, the fake takedown and overhand. He threw it often, and look, it really did disrupt Wes's game. Wes was obviously gun shy, or not gun shy, takedown shy. He was worried about getting taken down, which of course limited his tools, changed the way that he was fighting. The jab worked, the leg kicks worked.
The leg kicks were money, man. The leg kicks were money. That were fantastic. For a guy that's like a traditional boxer, that sort of thing, for throwing as many leg kicks as he does, I'm super impressed by that with Wes.
Yeah, look, his leg kicks were good. The jab was good. And look, a lot of people, I spoke to a few people afterwards, they couldn't understand that he was throwing the right hand to the chest. But I think, at least this is just my interpretation, that he was throwing that...
To try and catch him coming down?
Exactly, the anticipation of that, because obviously if you throw it and he ducks and you slam one right on top of the head, you're going to know all about it. And again, that's experience that you can only get from hitting somebody on top of the head with a hard shot and feeling that, resonate back through your hand, back through your wrist. So I think he was anticipating that sort of level change, and that's why he was punching to sort of that upper chest area. And look, obviously it's a warning too for his Korean opponent. Hey, if you duck in, this is what's going to be waiting for you. I'm throwing these. I've been throwing these all night. So that kind of keeps him out of that middle line, keeps him off that that sort of duck and throw. But the Korean did a great job taking him down a few times, working him against the cage. He split Wes Kappa's nose. And look, again, I don't want to be, overly critical because it's easy to be critical when you're not there. But the judging 30-27, I think that's not indicative, again, of how close that fight was. Was it a normal Wes Kappa fight? No. Was it super exciting? Not super exciting fight. But it wasn't, in my opinion, it wasn't a 30-27 fight. And if you see at the end of the fight, you watch his Korean opponent, when those scores are read out, he pulls away from the referee and starts laughing and walks off.
Yes.
Now, I know some people who interacted with them later, they called it a hometown decision. I don't know so much it was a hometown decision. I think that Wes probably outstruck him. And, again, it's down to a preference of what you like. There was probably a little bit more octagon control from the Korean. He forced Wes up against the cage. Did he do a lot with it? I guess there was a few foot stomps and a few things. He did hit some big shots and he, busted Wes's nose and stuff. But I think the volume of strikes, the takedown defense, the getting back up, all those things went in Wes's favor. I do think it probably was Wes Kappa victory. 30-27, it wasn't, in my opinion. And I think if other people look at those scores, it just doesn't tell them how close that fight actually was. Great fight in terms of IQ. We didn't see the big knockouts. We didn't see those things. But for all the younger fighters watching, you can only fight with what's in front of you. Wes Kappa could have easily lost that fight 30-27 across the board, trying to set up and trying to get a crowd-pleasing knockout, trying to impress everyone, trying to wow everyone with his power, but it just wasn't there. And like I've said before, and I'll keep saying, you can't force a knockout. You can't make it be there when it's not there, and it just wasn't there. He wasn't fighting a fight that gave Wes the distance to set those shots up. He was in on those takedowns, in on the cage a lot, and I think in terms of fight IQ, Wes fought a really high IQ fight in terms of, hey, I need to get past this opponent. I'm not out here to try to impress everybody. This guy is very, very tough. He's trying to implement a very, very niche, narrow, specific game plan to get me to a point where he can wear me out, grind me down, stay on top of me, and just 30-27 me across the board, which could happen easily if you get baited into that game of trying to hit him with big power shots and him being able to get in on those doubles or taking you down off the cage. So in terms of fight IQ, really high fight IQ from Wes Kappa. Was it 30-27? I don't believe so. And look, and a great fight and a good fight from his Korean opponent. And I hope it doesn't discourage him or other Koreans from coming across here. I think if he was to go back and watch that fight, turn the commentary off, judge it purely on, and people have to remember, a fight not judged on the entirety of the fight, it's judged on each individual round. Now, if you go back and watch that, commentary off, each individual round, I think there's a good enough case there to say 29-28 to Wes Kappa wins that fight. And I think if his opponent goes home and watches it in that light, I think he can probably come to that as well. But I do understand a little bit of frustration hearing 30-27s getting read out when you just put your heart, soul into a performance like that, where you feel there's a potential that you could be on the winning side of the argument and then find out that they don't think you won a round.
No, of course. And a couple of things there. I mean, first of all, yes, everything you scored sort of round to round. So Dominic Cruz, you're ever watching this podcast, that's exactly how it goes. You spot him in. It's a round to round fight. So, I mean, I could really sort of get into that. And I'm kind of going off a bit of a tangent here, but my God, he pisses me off with some of the things he says for a guy that's like so smart in this game. I'll move on from it. But I mean, second thing there, just for those Korean guys, I mean, Khan Diata's opponent, Hwan Lee Jong, I mean, shout out to him as well, the Korean top team guys, Chan Hong Sung, Wes Kappa's opponent, I'm sure they're not tuning into this podcast necessarily, but it's great seeing those guys come over, and we'd love to see them sort of come back, not be discouraged, as you said, by something like the scorecards and that sort of thing. It's great to see them come over here, meld with these guys, have some fantastic experiences and that sort of thing. I mean, these are experienced guys too, and everything, coming over and giving our guys a fight too, when they don't necessarily have the opponents. We know we have a lot of pullouts. We know we have a lot of injuries. It's the nature of the MMA game. And, these guys that have come over, they provide us with some saved fights, with some saved cards and that sort of thing. So, would absolutely love to see more of those guys come over and get some more fights for Eternal MMA. And just to the point for Wes Kappa, I mean, as far as his smart fight goes, he's not a brawler. You can see his boxing mind in there with every single little thing he does. Everything he throws is sort of thought out. There was that moment after the fight. They did start letting it go in that last sort of 10 or 15 seconds or so. We did get a late shot after the bell with the ref the ref just sort of stepping in there. I don't know if he stepped in late, but he didn't really step in with enough conviction,
authority.
with enough authority, I guess, sort of there. So you can sort of look at that in a few different ways. Wes kind of gave his little bit of a moment there where he sort of had a little bit of that, my hand caught in the cookie jar a little bit. But curious on your thoughts of that sort of little moment with that late shot after the bell.
Look, again, the thing, especially for us here in Queensland, we've had Pete Hickmott running the crew here for such a long time that the way we see the standard of refereeing in MMA here in Queensland, I think, is a pinnacle in Australia. And look, people are going to say you're biased, but I watch MMA everywhere in Australia, wherever it's on. I'm an MMA fan. I just think Pete, his team, the effort they put in, you just don't see those type of things. And again, you can't sort of, you know who Wes Kappa is. This has been a fiercely contested battle. The last 10, 15 seconds, they're throwing each other. You can't put your arm out like you're trying to wave down the, TransLink bus to go to city. You need to get in the middle of that. And yeah, look, don't get me wrong. Do I want to stick my head and my body in the way of Wes Kappa and the Korean guy throwing leather at each other? No, that I wouldn't go out of my, but I'm not the referee. When you decide to be a referee, that's what you take on. Hey, I have to protect the fighters. I have to, when I stop, hey, you have to make a very definitive choice. And I get, again, funny for the people at home. Wes did the little T-Rex arm spin around, like you said, hand in the cookie jar. My bad. Definitely not intentional, caught up in the moment. But the referee was kind of had a laugh, and I was like, hey, mate, like, I'm not sure what you're laughing for. You just let that kid cop a punch to the face, which staggered him, because you didn't get in there and stop it. And now you're kind of laughing and smiling like, hey, if you want to have a laugh and a smile afterwards about the spin and pirouette and all those things, sure. But I probably would be checking on the fighter. Hey, sorry about that, mate. My bad.
Tend to him straight away, like at least getting in the middle after that, and you're like, oh, and sort of stepping between him, and at least walking backwards and just check, look, like, are you okay? To sort of, that's what you sort of like to see.
Walking back to his corner, maybe even say to the corner, like, hey, I missed that one. And it's okay to be a little bit late. I don't think it was necessarily late. The arm was there, but just the commitment from him.
I watched it back a couple of times. Like I kept just dialing back the 5 seconds. It wasn't late. It was just, like you said, that authority and conviction, that sort of thing. And again, obviously, same here. Not a ref, not in those moments, that sort of thing. All we're doing is observing in the moment what you'd like to see sort of happen better. That's all we can say. It's just what you'd like to see happen better. Is every single moment going to be absolutely perfect? Are these guys going to get it right every sort of single time? No. But, this is just sort of the thing that we say, hey, look, this is what we would have liked to have seen. At least sort of get in there, walking back a little bit, just, at least check on him. You didn't even really sort of see him, but check on him. I mean, maybe it was because of the reaction he kind of gave. He looked like he was sort of right. He didn't really sort of stumble too much. But, it's still those little details that can make a difference to the viewer at home.
Yeah, and look, like I said, we're just spoiled for choice out here in Queensland, where we have a lot of great refs. And for these big fights, we have Pete. And it's probably been a long time since, I guess, and of course, he's not infallible. I'm sure he's made them in the past and he'll make them in the future. But I guess when we get to see someone at the level of Pete Hickmott, who gets to, he referees UFC fights when they're out here. He's, obviously very high level, and that filters down into the other guys we've got here. And we have a consistency of referees here And, they talk to each other, they learn off each other, all those types of things. And there's also a system they've got here. You don't just walk in and start refereeing. They get you out the back, signing off gloves, looking at, there's a hierarchy. There's a system where people make their way into the cage, and, it's like anything, you earn your dues. So, yeah, I just think the program that Pete and the boys have set up here in Queensland works very well. And because it is such a good program and we see such good refereeing out here, it does, when we see other things like this, it stands out a little bit more than it would otherwise. And again, I think overall, outside a few little things, I think the refs had a fantastic night over there. I think they got it right 90% of the time. But yeah, it's just things like that, especially when a guy gets hit with a solid punch after the bell, and it really, really, I felt, was on the ref. He stuck that arm in the middle fairly sheepishly. Mate, I don't know what to tell you. I don't want to do it, and that's why I'm not a ref. But if you're going to ref, you do have to get in between. And there is the unfortunate nature that there might be one that comes your way, and you just got to do your best to dodge, duck, dive, dip, and, the dodgeball rules. And,
the 5 Ds, or the 5, whatever it is. That's rules. Yes.
That's
very
right.
fondly.
But yeah, no, look, good fight from Wes. A little bit of controversy there at the end. Wes, again, great on the mic. Good sort of, if you followed that story that he sort of gave in its entirety, it was a little bit discombobulated. But the end thing was, hey, if you're going to weight cut, do it properly. Don't binge eat and then try to cut weight. He obviously spoke about the dark side of weight cutting, which was, hey, losing some teeth and passing out and all that type of stuff. And anytime you see serious injuries in boxing, it's usually in the lower weights where guys have cut a lot of weight. Those type of events happen where people pass out, do all that type of thing, and then you go into a combat sport where you're getting hit in the head. Now, no one can make that choice for you. You're an adult. You make your own choices. But I think if you're having that much trouble cutting weight, I really think you should try the Robert Whittaker, method. Try the weight level up. And I mean, look, he's not a big middleweight. Robert's not a big middleweight by any stretch of the imagination. But look at the guys he's beat. He was the champ. And, he's all doing it at a reasonable body weight, and he's not having to kill himself at every weight cut, which I think increases his longevity in the sport. And it's definitely something to think about. And we spoke about on the podcast, what would it do to his performance? Hard to say out of that performance because of the style the Korean guy brought to the cage. But yeah, if I was Wes, one or two things, he's really, really got to speak to somebody about that diet. He really has to have some long conversations, maybe with the fight dietitian, someone locally over there in WA. But whatever he's doing didn't work, and given his previous stories, hasn't worked before. So he has to make a choice. Do I enlist professional help and do this the right way and safely, or do I fight up a division and I abandon this idea of a lightweight fight?
No, I mean, especially sort of, getting to the age that, Wes is sort of getting at. Typically speaking, we see most of the guys, sort of getting into their, early to mid sort of late 30s, typically sort of want to move up in weight class. So, it'd be interesting to sort of see whether he does want to try and make that cut again down to lightweight. But I mean, he doesn't look like he's like, a regular sized lightweight. Like, he looks like a big dude in there. Like, he looks significantly bigger than his opponent coming in. And does that have a lot to do with the fact that he didn't sort of cut that extra weight? I don't think necessarily, because he looks like a big frame dude in general, you know what I mean? So he sort of got that mass. I mean, you even talk about a guy like Robert Whittaker, not massive for middleweight, but I know his cuts to middleweight, they're not easy for him either. So, you got to imagine for a guy like Wes, I think even like, cuts to, 170, actually, what do we like to call it, in kilograms here in this country. I'm a traditional pounds guy when it comes to the cutting weight, but, for the welterweights and that sort of thing, whatever he wants to sort of do going forward, always put our hands up for a Wes Kappa fight. Hell of a dude. Loved having him on the podcast. I've had him on. He's always got a lot of time for speaking to people. does speak from the heart, does speak a lot of truths, as we said, well, as you said about talking about the weight cuts and giving some advice around that. So, you know, maybe he follows a little bit of his own advice and doesn't try to go down, but exactly right. Maybe if he does want to do that, he does certainly need the help, maybe from nutritionists to be able to get down.
Yeah, look, like always, you know, like most people, like myself, like yourself, I think if we followed our own advice half the time, we'd do a lot better than when we're handing it out to everybody else.
Again, easy for us to say, right? Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's the theme of the show.
Look, I guess the really good takeaway for Wes from this fight was, one, I thought it was an intelligent fight to get the fight over the line and get the W, get the win. It was a testament to his coaches, to Ben Vickers and the boys over there. I didn't know how he would go against a guy who kept bulldozing in on takedowns. And in terms of that, he came away at flying colours. So for future opponents who have it in their head, oh, hey, I'm just going to double leg, I'm going to work off the cage, I'm going to run the pipe on singles, I'm going to do all this stuff. Well, now you have to rethink, because we saw that happen for 3 rounds. And yeah, he got taken down a couple of times, got back up. But he really, like you said, he grew into those takedown defenses. He's obviously really evolved and is a work in progress in terms of that defense. But look at where it stands now, it's certainly good enough to keep the average Joe off him. So, you know, if your plan is, hey, I'm going to come in and, you know, wrestle Wes Kappa, it's a, you know, this is your, you know, the warning label, the warning sign will not get taken down at any moment. So good for the boys from Scrappy. It's, you know, a good game plan from them to keep him on his feet and to get him up off the ground. He showed good skills in doing it. And yeah, look, like I said, if Wes can take anything out of that, is that confidence against a skilled grappler, a skilled takedown, someone whose game is very, very narrow focused, for him to be able to survive in that realm, and not only survive, but also thrive. So yeah, it was obviously good night for him in that respect. And, you know, switching gears and going back over to the Korean, I'd like to see him back. I'd like to see him, you know, fight some other guys. I think, you know, he's fun. He throws with, you know, a lot of intent. He's that body. He's a brick.
Yeah, he certainly is, man. He's like a
very thick. I'd like to see
a rectangle, like just man. He's just like the head, the shoulders, the frame, and everything. He's just he's a large human.
Yeah, I'd like to see him in a fight where, you know, someone else engages him on that same level, in that
That'd
same style.
Yeah, and
just, you know, he's obviously is quite skilled. Yeah, I hope he's not too discouraged by the scorecards, and I'd like to see him come back.
In any state, I mean, his return to mixed martial arts has yielded him 3 wins on the trot, getting the win at Eternal 76, Eternal 80, and now Eternal 82, back-to-back wins for Wes Kappa as a mixed martial artist. But, I mean, we had 2 title fights at the top of this card. Called the people's main event, the Rod Costa versus Alan Philpott grudge match that we had for that bantamweight title. I mean, as far as a build-up to this fight, this was the biggest build-up as far as the fight's concerned on the card. You know, a lot of befores, a little bit of afters and everything, a lot of social media banter beforehand. You know, a lot of it sort of coming from one side, a lot of reactionary stuff from the other. I mean, as far as like, you know, promoting a fight goes, I mean, you can say what you sort of want in terms of, you know, are we crossing the lines? You know, are we pissing people off and all that sort of thing? But I mean, as far as promoting a fight goes, those guys did a hell of a job. You know, Rod Costa defends his title for the first time down at bantamweight. You know, that should be his home. I know he's fought up at featherweight, but, you know, coming down and making that cut to bantamweight and defending his title, I'd like to see him sort of stick there. But, you know, he got the job done in typical Rod Costa fashion. Whether those, you know, sort of little mini storms from Alan Philpott, clearly the sort of the better striker, the slicker striker with the better chops in that sort of regard. But, you know, Rod managed to sort of battle through it, get it to the ground several times. Finished it, you know, with a bit of an unorthodox head and arm choke from the bottom. And, you know, I'll let you talk about his little comments after that in terms of what he said as far as, hey, that's a head and arm triangle from the bottom, folks. You don't ever see that happen. That's not a move. I think he said something to the fact that he was looking for a way out. I'd die in here. Alan Philpott was looking for a way out. Now, I'm not a fighter. I don't know what that feels like in terms of that, you know, kind of choke from the bottom there. But in any rate, Rod looked great in terms of getting that finish. Again, had to sort of weather that storm, had to take the sort of the punches to get there. But I mean, if it's one thing Rod Costa doesn't do, it's quit. And he does often find a way to come out on top, which he did need to after a 2023 in which he fought twice and had the 2 losses. I know that coming into this fight, and he did mention this in his post-fight speech, that there was some things that he had to go through to get to this fight. Something he may talk about on the podcast, one thing of which I do know that I won't talk about here that he did have to go through, but it was a challenging lead up to the fight for Rod. So to come out and get the job done on top with an eye that was almost closed over after the fight from taking some of those shots. I mean, classic Rod Costa, HBF Stadium, Perth, Western Australia, scrappy MMA zone on display there, doing it for the people. And, what a show it was from start to finish. Before the fight and after the fight, it had it all.
Yeah, look, my favourite fight of the night. Hands down, it was my favourite fight of the night. Look, and I don't know if you've ever seen the Chael Sonnen interview where Chael's saying that don't say it if you don't mean it after the fight. You can't just say, no, I just said all that stuff to build up a fight. Well, I said, because I assumed that's what it was. I said, once they're fought, they'll leave it all in the ring and there'll be a hug and this, and there was no hug. And I think Rod, on 2 occasions after the fight, pushed Allen off him and away from him. He wanted nothing to do with him. The build-up was very real. The hate was very real. And look, you could see it from both guys. You could, there was originally, Phil Pott was really putting it to him. A lot of good shots, working up and down the body. Obviously, Rod got that second head started growing off his eye. It looked bad. I didn't know how that was going to go if it went more rounds as it went. Is it going to split open because it's got so much fluid in it? If that splits, I don't know how you contain that.
Is there going to be potential the fight gets stopped because of it?
Yeah. Does it close his eye over completely? It was, it would, I'm in that fight, I'm super selfish in terms of I wanted another round. I wanted another 2-3 rounds.
Of course.
Look, can they fight all night? Like, I don't know. It was just so much fun seeing that old school, almost grappler versus striker, matchup where you see the striker really putting it to the grappler, but then the grappler has that ace in the hole, has that, right, now I've got you on your back. Now I'm going to go to work. Now it's my turn. And we saw that, we saw once Rod got it to the ground, he, looked like Rod does. He really shows that not just black belt BJJ, but he's got that MMA grappling, which is another style of grappling. Again, because a lot of BJJ doesn't transfer 1-to-1 to MMA, and his MMA grappling is fantastic. And look, he weathered a really, really big storm. Like, he took a lot of shots to the head, to the body, to the legs. He weathered all those storms, waited for his moment, got him on the ground, and really, obviously, tried to work him. And again, Rod Costa, good fight IQ, get him down, where try and make him get up, try and make, because the more energy he uses, it takes pop off those punches. The more blood that gets in those arms, gets in those forearms, it makes it harder to punch again in those sort of later rounds. So that was good work from Rod. Look, again, I'm not in there. Phil Pott threw up an armbar from his back, which, again, it was probably the late 90s, the last time Rod Costa got caught in a spinning armbar, the old blue belt armbar from the back. It
was ambitious.
Yeah, it's probably been a long time since old Rod's got caught in one of those. I feel like it was probably a bit of a tactical error to throw that. Like, I mean, look, it's okay for me to say I wasn't getting punched in the face against the cage side. So, of course, it's easy for me to say that. But I don't know. I think he probably could have spent his energy and his time in a better attempt to get up or another decision to make, because once Rod got round that, he obviously progressed and was able to enforce more of his game. But then the round finishes, we get up and we start from the feet again. And look, Phil Pott came out looking as good as he did in the first round, working the head, working the body. We're getting this swollen eye. We're getting, the drama was there. Like, I was like, okay, how does this end? Can he get him on the ground again? Does the ref stop it? Are they going to have a look at this eye? And rightfully so. Phil Pott changed his stance, changed his looks, and was trying to hit that eye. Exactly what I would do, exactly what any fighter would do. A few more hits of that eye, and that thing's closing all the way over. You're not seeing out of that eye. And even with how far out it was off his head, you would be seeing that in your peripheral vision. You would, and your eye would track to it because you're not used to seeing things that are there. So the moment something's there,
Massive distraction. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is a distraction. So Rod did a fantastic job to keep, head on the game, pick his moment, got on top, really, really worked hard and grinded for that head arm choke for a long time. Philpott defended that really, really well. Eventually got it far enough and deep enough through that he went to like a rear naked grip on it, got reversed, finished it from the bottom. Now, after the fight, Rod obviously upset. He said, that's not a thing. Look, when it's that deep, that tight.
At that level.
And when you've been trying to defend it, like you're already lost blood to your head. Now you've had to bridge to get him off you, which is more exertion and more lack of blood to the head, and land still fully locked up. And look, Rod's been doing this for a long time. I would imagine that grip is real, real tight. So look, I'm not shady on Alan tapping to that. I think, obviously Rod was upset and obviously it was like the final bar of the throw. Like, hey, he was looking for a way out. You don't tap to head arm to the bottom. And look, that is true. A head arm from the bottom is an unusual way to finish the fight. Unless you've had the head arm from the top for a week already and you've got it cinched up as tight as that thing will go, then I can cut Alan a little bit of slack there. But, fantastic performance from both kids. Such a great fight. And I like I said, watching it the whole time, it really felt like 50-50. Is he
Very
going
entertaining.
to cut this eye? Is he going to knock him out? Is he going to finish it? Or is Rod going to get it to the ground? And can Rod finish it? Even when Rod got him down, I was like, is there time? Can he finish it this round? And when we go back, what's that eye going to look like between rounds? How big is this thing going to get? So, there was good drama for me. I liked it, and the action was flat out. And then, of course, like I said, that Chael Sonnen thing afterwards, don't say it if you don't mean it. And Rod obviously meant every word. He pushed Philpott off twice. Didn't want any part of the apology, or if there even was an apology, I don't know if there was. He didn't want any part of the post-fight embrace or anything. He obviously took it all very seriously, and the bad blood remains.
I mean, I think it was one of those things like, I can tell, sort of talking to Alan that, he does understand the promotional side of the games. I'm certainly not of the mind that he's not, meaning a lot of the sort of things he says, but I know he knows how to sort of play the game. And I mean, fair play to Alan. Alan's been there, done it all. Like, he had a big losing streak, got the win against Sean Echelon, came in. Like, the man at least comes in a fight. Like, you can't say that he doesn't, because, I mean, he's had, 33 now professional mixed martial arts fights at the age of 31 or 32, whatever it is. So, he's showing up, he's entertaining. He comes to, to get something out of you to, make it just a little bit juicy. And it was the fight we were talking about the most in the lead up. I mean, we had Quill and Soul killed in a big rematch against Don Marfan at the top of the bill. And this was sort of the fight that was dominating our minds a little bit, which is, sort of quite unusual when you've got a Quill and Soul killed fight, in his hometown. But it sort of reminded me of, a couple of things that I really love about Rod Costa, man. Like, I mean, he's very much the anti-Philpott, in that he's not interested in saying things for promotional reasons. There's no fat on anything he says. He just says things that he just sort of means. Like, he's not going out there and saying, I'm going to win the fight in this way or anything like that. He's a realist. He understands where his skill set is. He knows what his limitations are in the cage. He probably doesn't give himself enough credit for how good he is in the cage. I mean, as evidenced by, probably sailing Alan down the river there with that. Look, that doesn't happen. But, I mean, credit to Rod. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, very experienced and a guy and a medalist on the world stage at, the massive competitions they have worldwide. And as far as even what he sort of said before the fight, one of the things he said when he was on the podcast, when I asked him, and I said, look, Rod, I know you're not the type of guy to give me a prediction on where the fight goes or how it's going to end, but how would you sort of like to see it end? And he sort of thought about it and he says, I don't know how it's going to end, but it's going to go to the ground, and when it goes to the ground, he's going to give me something. And I mean, that's not really like it's, wow, that's so out of the blue in terms of how a Rod Costa fight will sort of finish. But that's what happened. It did go to the ground, and he did give him something, something that was quite unusual in terms of a finish. In terms of those little bit of the afters after the fight, you could tell Allen sort of had that look in his face like, it is what it is. Like, we hyped the fight up. I'll give you a bit of a hug, man. I was trying to piss you off to get under your skin. I would have loved to have seen Rod just to sort of acknowledge a little bit, and he did to a sort of a degree. Because again, I don't think Allen's like just this all the way bad guy or anything like that. He just gets that part of the game. But, sure, once Rod sort of calmed down a bit, he's like, it sort of is what it is. But Rod Costa starts the year with a much needed win, defends his bantamweight title for the very first time. See what comes next for Rod Costa at bantamweight. I'm sure there's plenty of challenges in those sort of smaller weight classes, but someone's got to emerge. Someone's got to step up. We need a fresh challenge for Rod Costa in that bantamweight division.
Yeah, look, the strange thing out of this all is I think this puts Alan Philpott to 1-5 in his last 6 fights.
Yes.
Now, for anybody who doesn't follow his career or anyone who doesn't watch him fight, you put.
Well, it's 1-6 to be fair, and he's it's kickboxing. No, it's 1-5. Sorry, there's a kickboxing fight there. Yeah, so no, in MMA 1-5.
So I honestly don't think his stock went down at all. Fantastic fight from him, and he was really putting it on Rod Costa. It's not like he didn't hit him. It's not like he didn't hurt him. I mean, the like I said, that other head that he was growing is evidence that he was hitting hard. He looked sharp. He looked good. He got caught where he probably didn't want to get caught. Full credit, obviously, to Costa to get him there. But I really don't think it sinks his status in terms of
do you want to see him fight any less because of it? Like, no, I don't. Like, he wants to fight in the next card. Get Alan Philpott in there because he's going to show up and he's going to cause some trouble, and he's going to do the thing. Like, he's sort of beyond that wins and losses kind of thing at this point. He's just an entertaining guy to have on a card.
And I think it puts him in a unique situation because I think what's going to happen with the body of work that's as large as his is, you're going to start getting guys who see that 1-5 record and want to fight him. They're like, oh, hey, I'll fight Al Philpott, because they want to sort of get a big scalp, someone who's fought internationally, someone who's fought that many fights, and they want to get that scalp. Like I said, I think people underestimate him. I think he's underrated. He only fights the best guys, and he only loses to the very best of the best.
Well, I mean, you look at that record. I mean, as far as when you go back to, you had, we're talking MMA here, but had a loss to an international opponent. I mean, a loss to Justin Van Heerden, Diego Pereira, Abdallah Baeta, and now Rod Costa. Like, those are 4 very high-end guys in terms of, it's the top of what we sort of got here. So, and like, I mean, you still got to say, I mean, 20 wins on his record. Like, that's, I mean, it's a few more wins than I'm going to have in my career. Let's sort of put it that way. So it's he's certainly had a storied career, and he's fought the cream of the crop, as you said, sort of recently. So it's not a stock-hurting performance.
I think it's a unique and good position for him because he obviously has a good relationship with Cam and Eternal. He's a fantastically fun fighter to watch. I think for him now, it's he gets to have fun fights. You get to have those fun fights. Hey, give me that guy. Give me that guy. I'll fight that guy. Do you know what I mean? I think it's an opportunity for him to fight some really fun matchups because look, he's got that 1-5 record, which doesn't look fantastic, but he's got such a fun and such a good style. And it really is one of those guys who on any given night, he could beat one of these top 10 guys easily. He's got the skills. He's got the abilities to do it. It's, I really think that he's in a good position to be able to almost pick a fight, if that makes sense. Almost like, hey, this guy matches my style. I think we could have a great bang-em-up fight because obviously he likes to bang. Obviously he likes the banter. He likes all that stuff. And I think it's good for the Eternal too. It's good for Eternal to be able to have a guy that they can just randomly match. Hey, that's a fun fight. Let's do you. Hey, it might not mean heaps for the division, but it's a super fun fight for the crowd. And it's good to have that to put into a card and go, hey, here's a fun fight that will just tear the place down. These guys are going to go to war. We're going to love it. They're going to love it. The crowd's going to love it. Everyone's going to love it. So I think it's a good position for him. For Rod, it's a I don't know what to do. I don't know what he does now. Like, obviously, great win for him. Does he stay there and defend that belt? I'd like to see it happen. Is there enough opportunity for him there? Is there enough guys to come and challenge him for that belt? Again, that's a question for Cam and the boys at matchmaking. Because, obviously he's gone up to lightweight, to flyweight, and he's had a few losses and stuff. So where did he go? Was it
Featherweight.
Lightweight? Featherweight.
Yeah, so fought most of his career at featherweight, came down for that one fight at bantamweight against Sean Esch and got the title. Yeah, yep.
So feather. So does he go to feather again and try his luck again? It's he's kind of a bit in. I guess it all depends on what Eternal has for him, because obviously, what would be great for Rod would be 2 belt champion. The old 2-time champion, something that everybody wants, and it's that very rare feather in the cap for anybody to ever get, because everybody's so good at weight cutting these days that body size and weight is almost super unique to a weight division. So to be able to move outside that weight division one either way and still win it's rare air. So, obviously I'd like to see him have a crack at it, but I guess it's up to him and his team what they want to do.
And we'll certainly see what sort of comes of it. I mean, when he was on the podcast, he really sort of alluded to the fact that he's happy to sort of go back and forward. He's sort of not too stressed. There was no sort of particular focus. I guess his focus was on the fight that was coming up, and he sort of got through that. I think it's one of those things in bantamweight we really have to see sort of who emerges as far as opponents. I know we're probably a little bit more rich in terms of featherweight opponents and that sort of thing, but I mean, he's fought so many people that are sort of at the top at featherweight. So, I would love to sort of see if we do have someone sort of obvious, come through those bantamweight ranks, someone young, someone sort of fresh. Obviously, Rod's got to sort of heal up, enjoy this win. We'll get Rod on the podcast to talk about it, talk about the win, but I mean, let that sort of eye heal and just enjoy life for a little bit, because, he's an Eternal boy, dyed in the wool, always putting his hand up for a fight. So very much looking forward to seeing him rest up, and I would love to see him defend that bantamweight title. But we did have the last fight we'll talk about, which is obviously at the top of the card, which obviously was one of the biggest fights we've had in recent memory, especially with everything that was on the line, not just a lightweight title belt, but I mean, looking to sort of who the future is of the lightweight division here in this country. 2 absolute studs, really coming up in their career, 24 and 23 years old respectively. Quillen, the champion, coming in and defending his belt against Don Marfan. Don Marfan, an opponent, Don Marfan previously having fought Quillen, early in his career with his first loss against Quillen by a rear naked choke, went on his own 3-fight winning streak. Of course, Quillen went on his own little streak to get himself the belt, and then we get a fantastic situation. We get to see these 2 young guys coming up in sort of the, that part of their game where they get to see each other at the top and fight once again. Don Marfan, so confident coming into this fight, no stone left unturned, so passionate about what he sort of does. As he talked about before the fight, he eats, sleeps, breathes this game. He's not going out on the weekends. He puts so much stock into it. And so I really felt for him after this fight. But I mean, it's really just a bigger testament to what we're looking at a guy in Quillen Soul Killed here, and him emerging as just an absolute monster. And he's grown up so quick with his skill set, because I remember seeing him fight for the first time when he had his opening loss. And it's not that I didn't think that he was a good fighter or anything like that, but he certainly wasn't anyone that was kind of on my radar. And all of a sudden, he looks like a well beater. I mean, as far as someone who's potentially ready for that next level, he's definitely someone who looks like he'd sort of go on to that sort of next level and be very competitive on sort of the world stage. Does he fight again here locally in Australia? Look, being selfish, obviously, we'd sort of love to see it. Very entertaining. I mean, obviously, his hometown, Perth, Western Australia. And he does get the job done for a second time in that rematch against Don Marfan to get his second title defense at lightweight. Looked damn good doing it. Very, very well-rounded fighter. You can obviously talk about this, but managed to show it all. Looked like he was in not trouble in the first round, but it was certainly all Don Marfan sort of for the most part of the first round. And then he took over in the second and got that win by the rear naked choke for the second time. But very entertaining for as long as it lasted by 2 of the best up-and-coming lightweights we have in the country.
Yeah, look, it's the classic example of the Colby Covington, Kamaru Usman situation. For a long time, if it wasn't for Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington would be the champion.
Yes.
This is the same situation here. if it wasn't for Quillen, Don Marfan would be the lightweight champion. There's no doubt in my mind that he would be the champion. But there is just this mustache monster running wild in the top of the division. And yeah, that's right.
Looking good. No, I'd like to be able to pull it off, but I mean, he makes it look too good. I'm very jealous, you know.
Look, and it's very rare that I would be lost for words. And that fight, I afterwards, I didn't know what to say, and I was kind of a bit stuck because we spoke about it on the podcast. We said Dom needs to come out and put a stamp on it. He needs to let Quillen know that he's not the same fighter. He's not scared of his ground. He came out, took him down, and for 3 minutes, 46 seconds of the first round, it was the Dom Marfan show. He showed great control, great grappling, great everything. And it was almost like Quillen was asleep. And he just woke up from his slumber and was like, hey, I'm in a championship fight. Threw that triangle up. Now, that triangle was like, it wasn't like it was like this elaborate setup or anything like that. It was a fraction, a moment in time where there was a little bit of space and he capitalized on it. Fantastic job from Dom to get out of that because that was tight, locked in, tight. I actually thought that might have finished it, but credit to Dom to get out of that. But I'm not sure what happened in that shift because it went from being all Dom Marfan to being Quillen for the rest of the fight. Quillen never stepped back. He took over the grappling. He took over the striking. He took over the submissions. He took over in every facet of the game. And like I said, I'm still a little bit perplexed at exactly what happened because Dom looked fantastic. Dom, for all intents and purposes, was in control for 3 minutes, 46 seconds. And then, like I said, it was like he was sleeping. And look, at first, I rewound the fight. Shows how old I am. Yeah, I rewound the cassette.
Yep.
So I went back. I moved the bar on the bottom of the screen back, and I watched because at first I was like, hey, you know, I need to have a look at Quillen coming out. Was he dry? Did he warm up prematurely, and then was there like a large gap between when he got to come out and fight, or did the Philpott and Costa fight finish prematurely or early into what they thought it was going to be, and he hadn't warmed up completely? But when he walked out, he seemed to have a little bit of sweat on him from what I could see. So he looked like he was warm. It just looked like he was just coasting. And then whatever was happening on the ground, he changed gears. And from then it just Quillen took over. And like, it wasn't he took over like a little bit. It was dominant.
Yeah.
From that point
straight
forward.
away, never let up.
Dom didn't look like he was in the fight after that. And look, you know, if you want to see what hard work, really, really hard work that didn't pay off looks like, just look at Dom Marfan squatting against the cage while Quillen's giving that. My heart broke for that kid because that is honest.
It's the game. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that thing that they can never prepare you for, because I've got no doubt he trained like a monster for that. And to get finished again in the second round, again by rear naked choke, it's just a boogie monster. That Quillen, like I said, he's the mustache maniac running right in the lightweight division. And yeah, it's heart broke for Dom.
It's sort of, I mean, we talked about Quillen last time we were on the podcast in terms of what we've seen from him in his wins, and we've had a little bit of everything. We've been able to see the submissions, we've been able to see Quillen get the knockout. We got to saw him go 5 rounds and look dominant from bell to bell against Brett Pastor. So he's sort of shown everything that he can go the full 5 rounds. He can look dominant, and we get to see something else in this fight. We get to see how he sort of overcomes adversity, which he did in spectacular fashion in that first round. So in terms of like a bit of a mixtape, you know, for him to be able to submit on to someone else who might be potentially watching him, when we know you got the guys in the UFC already have their eyes on him because he had the road to the UFC. Pardon me, the voice is sort of going there. We've been doing this for an hour and a half, so the voice is going. But, you know, in terms of the mixtape that he's putting together for what he can do, of how he can finish the fight early, how he can go the full 5 rounds, how he can deal with the adversity and come back and look fantastic, And I mean, just everything that he does in terms of every little transition on the ground, every submission attempt, every strike he throws, he looks like he knows what he's doing in every single second, whether he's in trouble or whether he's not. And the way he sort of goes about it, and I've said this before about Quillen, the thing that I love about him, and this is why I think he's going to do really good things in the sport, you can look at a lot of other guys we've had sort of go out from this country that, we think look, like, I wouldn't say world beaters, but they look like they're going to do some damage. The difference with Quillen is he's quietly reserved, and you can see in his eyes that he's just so quietly confident about what he does, and he lets his talking be done in the cage. Doesn't say a lot when he comes on the pod, but you can just see it in his demeanor. You can just see it in his body language and everything, that everything he does is no surprise to him. It's expected, and he's going to do a lot of good things going forward because of that demeanor matched with his skill set. It's a pretty sort of unique thing. I think the mustache definitely helps for sure. We can't get rid of that. It's kind of like his Samson's hair. But, in terms of everything you sort of like to see from a fighter, both of how they match their mentality with their skill set, Quillen Soulkill's got that thing. And to your point for Dom, as far as heartbreak and that sort of thing goes, same here. Heart goes out to him. No doubt he knew in his mind 100% that he was coming in there and winning that fight. But as you said when we first started talking about it, it seems like Quillen is his Kamaru Usman, and we can say that because they fought twice, and Dom has not unfortunately come out on top both times. But if there's one thing he can hang his hat on, and I said this to Dom after the fight, hey, you come in here, you're putting your hand up to fight for Eternal MMA, you're fighting the best guys in the world. You're not fighting on some rickety promotion where you're going up against some guy that's 39 years old with a 2-8 record or anything that. You're fighting the best of the best here. And again, if Quillen Soulkill's not here, Don Marfan is in all likelihood the champion. He definitely bounces back. He definitely has a good future in this sport. There's happier days ahead for Don Marfan. There's happier days for both of those guys, but we got to bear witness to something special of two Australian lightweights going at it, and Quillen Soulkill looking fantastic in the process.
Yeah, look, Dom's a kid still. Plenty of room for growth and plenty of room to expand his skill set, to bridge the gaps in his game. I just think at the moment, Quillen's just, he's got all the momentum. He's got absolute 100% belief in himself. You can see that in his eyes. You can see that in his actions. His skill levels, obviously, it's right there for him to be able to compete with the very best in the world. Yeah, look, it was a good fight while it lasted. It would be interesting to be able to talk to Dom and ask him. It appeared like he copped a pretty significant right hand at the beginning of round 2. It'd be interesting to ask him how much that right hand affected him and whether it.
Well, he did take that head kick from Quillen too. You see, he threw that head kick up and it hit him. So yeah. Yeah,
it'd be interesting to see because, like I said, Quillen just took over in such a dominant fashion. Like I said, I wasn't sure if Quillen, I guess, you hear that thing that sometimes people need to be punched to realize they're in a fight, to get them going. And, it really felt like Quillen was asleep, but when he woke up, you woke up the monster. And, he really, really dominated that, what was left of the fight, that next sort of, 3 minutes, he dominated, and that chaining of submission, going for that rear naked choke.
Oh man, so relentless, yeah.
It just never. And look, fantastic work from Dom to defend it for as long as he did. But interesting to hear Quillen in the post fight speak on that, to say, well, he's not necessarily trying to finish every rear naked choke. It's just working away at him. Just keep.
It's just work, man.
Wearing him down. Just keep getting it under the chin. Just keep working it. And it's interesting to see that mindset of he's not hanging his hat all on, okay, the hands under the chin, give it everything I've got, blow my
100%, man. Exactly right. And that's part of what I was talking about with that mentality, is that I know you would see a lot of fighters that want to try and go in and get the fight finished because they're not confident in their ability to go deep into a fight or see where the fight plays out. They want to knock out quick. They want to sink everything in. They want to sort of get in and get out of there. And you hit the nail on the head like Quillen's like, he's looking for it, but he's like, listen, if this doesn't come off, I've got plenty of other tools in my belt. There's plenty of ways I can sort of get that fight done. There was actually an interesting moment. I'm sort of moving after the fight here, but, we saw a little bit of, kind of I guess, the future and sort of a bit more of the immediate future, not so much a built-in storyline, but I mean, we had Tom Nolan, obviously, in Don Marfan's corner, of course, out of Compton, Team Compton, where Dom trains out of. Of course, Tom Nolan, former Eternal fighter, now in the UFC. We know, unfortunately for Tom, that fight didn't go his way for his debut. But obviously those guys sort of shook hands there. I don't know how well they sort of know each other, whether there was ever any potential for them to fight while Tom was still here in Australia. But it was fascinating to me just to even see that moment of those guys sort of shaking hands and sort of looking at each other. And it sort of makes me wonder, does Quillen sort of look at Tom and think like, I'm coming for what you've got essentially now. I'm not saying that in a bad blood type way, but I can't help but think that, Quillen would sort of look at a guy like Tom, who wasn't a champion here, who went over straight to the UFC, got his fight on the Contender Series. You just got to imagine that Quillen sort of looks at him and goes, I'm coming for what you sort of got right now after I've just taken out your boy from your training center. You got to imagine that's sort of something you're sort of looking to. And for all intents and purposes, as of what we've seen from him right now, he's certainly a guy that can make that transition from now.
Yeah, look, I think it obviously completely changes the landscape once they go overseas and fight. Like if Quillen gets picked up by the UFC and goes to fight there, there's obviously certainly no bad blood, and if anything, they're probably more likely to train together because obviously iron sharpens iron. They're both very, very high level guys, and when you go over there, it's Australia versus the world. Any type of rivalries or teams or anything like that, the likelihood that they would match two Australians against
I don't want to see that. No,
it's all but zero. And I think they know that.
Yeah.
And I think, obviously, getting to train with a guy like Tom Nolan's a great opportunity because Tom's obviously a long, rangy guy, and it's hard to replicate guys like Tom unless you have a Tom, unless you know a Tom, you've got your own Tom. And the same thing for Tom to get, like I said, a guy like Quillen that's so skilled in so many different areas. And if anything, I hope that they get an opportunity to train together when they're back here, when they're not overseas. I really hope they get that and take that opportunity to improve each other so they can go out. Because look, at this stage, there's all but zero. I don't want to say zero, but there's all but zero chance of Quillen, Don Marfan 3. We've seen it twice, the same result twice, the same fashion twice. That as far as I'm concerned, that's over. That's done. We know the outcome. So you can probably put that little bit of a rivalry aside, and those guys can train together, train with each other, because at this point, we're pretty sure that at some stage the UFC will come knocking, looking for Quillen. I think, he was already looked at. And since he was looked at, I mean, look what he's done.
Yeah.
All he's done is made it look, he's put a little bit of style on it now. He's made it look even more fantastic. I've got to assume that he's a beacon in the night. They've got to be noticing him. And I don't think it's long before he's picked up and taken over there. Minimum for a Contender Series berth, if not, just get picked up and signed in general. So I think that that sort of rivalry is done, and the opportunity for those guys all to train with each other. Don Marfan, like I said, he is the second best lightweight in the land behind Quillen. Quillen goes, he's the best lightweight in the land, and there'll be someone who steps up to challenge for that vacant belt. And I would assume, if I was to guess, it'll be Dom versus whoever that other person is, because Dom's the obvious, I think, heir to the throne. So, look, I think a lot of things come out of this. I think we'll probably, at a guess, lose Quillen to the UFC. And I hope we do. I hope we lose him to the UFC. He's 24 years old. He's in the prime of his life. He's physically capable, mentally capable. Like, he's lucid enough in his post-fight to be talking about, hey, I'm not putting it all into one thing. I've got plenty of tools. I'm just wearing on them. You know what I mean? Just to even have that post-fight, to have that type of thought pattern shows the type of person he is. So I'd like to see him move on to greener pastures. I'd like to see Dom fight for the vacant belt, and I'd like to see all those Australian guys have the opportunity to get together put all former rivalries aside and help each other win overseas. Because that's all that matters now. Once you get beyond our shores and you start fighting in international promotions, hey, I just want to see all Australians help each other. The rest of it's, when you're here, sure, rivalries, everyone's fighting for the belts. I understand the no cross training. But once we're overseas, I really want to see these guys get in and out of each other's gym. There's no way you can't learn something from Quillen's camp, and there's no way Quillen's camp couldn't learn something from Compton's. So, do you know what I mean? I'd like to see that sort of cohesion happen, but, great fight, heartbreak for Dom, but out of heartbreak, I hate to use the old cliche, the Phoenix shall rise. It's, he's, that kind of burnt him to ashes, like seeing him squat against the fence, the look on that kid's face, like my heart broke for him. It looked like somebody had taken stole a bit of him that night, but I think that really burnt him to the ground, took him to rock bottom. But if Quillen leaves, well, like I said, out of the ashes rise, you're, the Phoenix, you're reborn, the lightweight belt will be there. And look, unless someone's got a better example, he's the heir to the throne.
No, I mean, it's only 2 losses on his very young pro career. So, like we said, plenty of good things coming forward for one Don Ma fan. I mean, we look forward to Eternal 83. I mean, we've got a big lightweight fight there with Jack Becker versus Josh Togo. So, maybe that's a future, whoever comes out of that, maybe the winner or loser of that fight or something like that. We, of course, know Jack Beck is a former Eternal lightweight champion, so maybe we sort of see that potentially in the future. But, of course, share the same sentiments for Don Ma fan. It's the comeback story is on for him and for Quillen Soul Killed. Defends his title for the second time. Do we see him back here? Maybe not. It'd be cool to see him back. But of course, we wish him all the best if he goes on to things like the UFC, because that's definitely in his future. And very much looking forward to seeing him do big things over there. So once again, congratulations, Quillen Soul Killed. Congratulations to all the winners on the main card, all the winners on the prelim cards. We saw some fantastic fights, as we always do. There's not many cards we talk about here. We get many sort of bum cards, especially sort of top to bottom. It's completely loaded. We get to look forward to now to Eternal 83 coming up on March 16. No doubt we'll talk about that card coming up. We've got John Martin Fraser versus Ben Johnston there at the top of the bill for the middleweight championship. What an absolute cracking fight that's going to be. Can't wait to talk about that in depth. We get Elliot Compton versus Lachlan Stitt. Lachlan Stitt coming back for his return after his last loss. But, I mean, to get Elliot Compton to come over and fight for Eternal MMA, that's very cool. And the aforementioned Jack Becker versus Josh Togo for a lightweight fight. Of course, Jack Becker coming back to fight, since his devastating leg break. Of course, he's been back, but I mean, he's still on that road back to getting some wins under his belt since that recovery. So we soldier on. I believe we also had, it was Anthony Drillich, I think, was getting on that card to defend his flyweight championship. I believe that was on Eternal 83. We've also got Eternal 85 for those interested. That is up on eternalmma.com. You can get your tickets for that one there. Eternal 84 is still being worked out as far as where that's going to take place. Where is that going to take place? Is it going to be in Queensland? Is it going to be in Western Australia? Who knows? Maybe you guys can talk about it in the comments. Maybe it's a bit of a mystery location. Some cards are being played very close to the chest as to where that could possibly be, but we will watch that space and see where Eternal 84 goes down. But for Eternal 83, the next one coming up, we've only got about 60 tickets left for that one. That one's selling out very fast. That's John Martin Fraser versus Ben Johnson, an absolutely epic middleweight title fight. So make sure you get your tickets to those. But of course, if you are not getting that, as Darryl Martin always says, it's a measly $11 per month that you can tune in and see the best fighters that we have here in this country putting it on as they do, and we always look forward to it. So that is your recap for Eternal 82. Darryl will, of course, do it again for Eternal 83. Any last sentiments before I let you go, my man?
No, look, I think we covered it all. Great night, great fight. We've got great fights coming up. We'll obviously, we'll do a little potty before the Ben Johnson, John Martin Fraser card. And look, that card's going together fantastically. Cam, we obviously know we've had some fighters drop out for medical reasons and other reasons on that card. Cam's done a fantastic job to keep that card together, keep a fantastic main card for that. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to the upcoming cards.
Looking forward to breaking it down with you as always, man. I'll let you go, let you enjoy the rest of your night. It's Valentine's Day here in Australia, so maybe we got some wives and girlfriends to attend to and be a bit more sort of tender than we are instead of talking about fights here on the podcast. But we shall see, and I will talk to you on the next one, brother. Take care. Thank you as always, and we'll see you in the next one.